Story 1. Getting stuck in a tight space, unable to escape or call for help, could result in dying of dehydration after several days. I am severely claustrophobic. Story 2. The one I do not want is being eaten alive by ants. The one I fear the most is the decline into dementia and the loneliness that can accompany it. Story 3. Being buried alive is terrifying. The idea of being stuck in a wooden box 6 feet underground while everyone thinks you are dead, and knowing no help is coming, is horrifying. The following days would be a nightmare. There are many cases of people being buried alive, and only God knows how many have gone undiscovered. In the past, people were buried with a string attached to a bell, which, if pulled, would ring at the surface to alert others. It makes your blood run cold. Story 4. Eaten alive by any animal or human, the horror of knowing my entire existence was nothing more than lunch to a bear, shark, tiger, lion, or person would terrify me in my final moments, making it feel like an eternity. Story 5. My ex always said she only stayed married to me because she was sure I would die and she would get the life insurance, the retirement savings plan, and the house. We divorced, and I told her it looks like she failed. She told me she would hate for me to outlive her. That would be the biggest slap in the face to her. Story 6. Dementia. I have seen what it does to people, and if I ever learn it is happening to me, I will get my gun and end my life quickly and painlessly. I will take a bullet over that nightmare any day. Story 7. Burned, drowning, freak accident, or injury. My new concern is not having arrangements in place for my wife and son. I want to ensure my cash, properties, and businesses all go to them. A family friend passed away. His children had to spend close to $30,000 on lawyers to help secure the assets he left for them. They were already well off, but that was still a lot of money wasted on something that should have been handled beforehand. Story 8. Look up Lacey Fletcher. If you are sensitive, do not look her up. She is one of the most mentally resilient people on the planet for what she endured. Story 9. Being shackled to a decaying corpse was a practice the Romans used for murderers, binding them to their victims. Story 10. Not pooping before I die. Seriously, my biggest fear is that heaven ends up being real and now I want to go to the restroom for eternity. Story 11. Sinkhole. There is no way to predict it. Nothing you or anyone else can do. You have time to know you are going to die. Story 12. Choking on food when no one is around to help me. Plenty of time to slowly realize what is happening and how tragic and unexpected such a death would be. Story 13. Burning alive is not the most painful experience, but fear-wise, being eaten alive is worse, especially if it involves a large number of small creatures. Story 14. Possible or imagined? I have read about torture methods from the past. The imagination that humans have for devising torture methods is mind-boggling. Being burnt alive, for example at the stake, sounds horrendous and very painful. However, it is relatively quick and you probably die within an hour. There are countless techniques of impaling which can cause days of excruciating pain. Some forms of torture involve using animals. One method uses rats to eat through your stomach. Another involves being tied up, immobilized, and made to lie in a boat or barrel. After being force-fed honey, you get diarrhea and soil yourself. Maggots feed on you as you lie in your excrement. It is days of suffering as maggots eat you alive. The list of torture methods goes on, most calculated for maximum pain over maximum time. Of course, in real life, I am unlikely to be drawn and quartered by cruel sadists. However, there are many real cases of people trapped and injured after, say, an earthquake or even falling into a hole and being trapped and injured without being rescued. That results in days of slow, painful death. Excruciating pain from injuries, including broken bones, coupled with hunger and thirst, until consciousness is lost. Best death scenario? I hope to be in relatively good health until one day I die painlessly in my sleep. Story 15. Dying of a broken heart may sound laughable until I explain that losing a child, a family member, or a partner you truly care for and love is devastating. I could never imagine losing one of my children. You are my baby. I truly believe it would ultimately kill me. Story 16, being executed by a gang or cartel. Some of it is because I am being tortured before I die, and most of it is because I will end up on the internet for some 12 to 16-year-olds or others who watch graphic content. Story 17, slowly burning alive. Have you ever burned yourself and thought this is the worst pain ever? Yes, that feeling. Story 18. In a storm or natural disaster, my children know that if I die, they will likely not be able to survive without my help. I might be swept away, looking back at them and knowing there is nothing I can do to help them any longer. Story 19. It was burning. Nowadays, it would be falling from a height impossible to reverse if you change your mind. Being electrocuted also feels horrible. Story 20. There is no single cause. Burning, rabies, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, are all possibilities. Story 21. Going for a scuba dive on a boat far out at sea. When I come back up to the surface, the boat and everyone else are gone. It is just me and someone else floating and waiting to see if they return or if a shark appears. This happened in Australia. There was a film called Open Water. Story 22. Having a god give me super healing that allows me to live to be 100,000 years old, only for the government to find out and decide that is too much power. They capture me and lock me in a small, tight box where I am held hostage until I finally die 100,000 years later. Story 23. Falling from a great height can be dangerous. My father's friend jumped off a building and suffered fatal injuries. I do not want to experience such a tragic event for the sake of my family. Story 24. Feet first into any kind of slow-moving, high-torque industrial machinery like a wood chipper or industrial shredder. That kind of equipment is slow, painful, and inexorable. Story 25. Any torture. Probably being flayed alive. You have to boil the person's skin before you remove it to get it to come off in one piece. It is horrific. Story 26. I became a father last year. Before my son was born, I did not fear death. Now, nothing terrifies me more than leaving him to navigate the world without me before he is ready. Story 27. Someone posted a story some time ago about a man in the army who was on deployment while his wife fell in the shower and died. Their toddler was found dead weeks later. There were scratch marks on the child-proof cupboards where the child had been trying to get food. There are a few ways of dying I fear for myself, but something like that happening to someone I know would destroy me. I still think of that story often, of that poor child trapped with their deceased parent, unable to get out for weeks or however long it took. The child was just crying and trying to reach food that was so close, with no one coming to help until it was too late. Story 28. Not being able to breathe. I had respiratory syncytial virus a couple of years ago, and I woke up one night and couldn't move any air in or out for just a minute or two. It was terrifying until the first little bit of air squeezed out. Story 29. Outliving my children would be emotionally devastating. Every second without them would be unbearable. I would pray for release from this suffering. Story 30. Something drawn out and neurological. Multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I just have a feeling my nervous system would be vulnerable to this type of demise. Story 31. Real talk. Having a stroke or heart attack while able to see someone who could call for help. But they do not notice me and I cannot get their attention. I guess feeling helpless in general. I do not want to go out helpless and alone. Story 32. Anything prolonged, painful, involving a lot of suffering, panic, and fear. I hate pain. I have a low pain tolerance in some unusual way because I am a chronic pain patient. I will go to work with my head in my armpit, but I can't stand a headache. I don't want to have to think about who will mourn my death and what might happen. I don't want to have the time for pain, fear, and regret to kick in. Either a peaceful death in my sleep or a split second, and I am gone. Story 33. Choking. I have a narrow esophagus, so food frequently gets stuck in my throat. My biggest fear is not being able to dislodge it when no one is around if I cannot do it myself. Story 34. My biggest fear growing up was either drowning or fire. Now that I am older and have lost my last parent, I think more realistically. Both my parents died from strokes. That is now my main fear. I am afraid that I will have a stroke someday in the near future. Living alone, I will not have anyone to help me get to the hospital, and I might die at home alone and in pain. Story 35. Anything that causes pain, and I would be conscious during at least some of it. I am terrified of drowning because I always accidentally inhale water, and it hurts a lot. Story 36. I am driving down the road. Then I wake up in pain in the emergency room. Doctors are in a panic around me. Oh no, I am dying. Story 37. Buried alive. Lying there motionless, unable to move. Slowly dying of thirst over the course of a week. Story 38. Slowly, in a nursing home, bedridden and possessing just enough awareness to know that my mind and body are deteriorating while I am unable to do anything about it. Story 39. Being eaten whole and digested. Every day I thank the gods that I live in a country where the largest animals are herbivores. Story 40. Drowning. I have always been scared of deep sea and similar environments. I nearly drowned when I was 12. The feeling of swallowing water is very unpleasant. Story 41. Drowning and oxygen deprivation. Just holding your breath for a long time makes you start to feel anxious. I can only imagine what it is like to be held underwater for a longer period. Story 42. There are probably worse ways. But knowing that, in the past, people were placed inside a metal bowl where they would be cooked alive is disturbing. This is similar to the unfortunate accidents today where people are cooked in an oven. I just cannot imagine such a very painful and slow way to die. Story 43. Suffocating alone, pretty much being alone and dying. Though swimming into the ocean and drowning does not seem too bad. Story 44. I fear having to say goodbye to my loved ones. I also fear not being able to say goodbye to my loved ones. I fear permanent goodbyes in general. If there is a way of dying that still allows me to be with my loved ones forever, that would be great. I do not want to be alone. Story 45. Cancer. I know that people can come back from it, but no one I have ever known has. The word terrifies me. I have seen what it does to people. I have seen strong men, towers of strength, stripped down to their bare bones, and they knew what was happening. They tried their utmost to use the days they had left to make things as easy as possible for everyone who would be left behind, organizing their entire lives so as not to be a burden. I hope when my day comes, it is quick. Story 46. Painfully. Just let me go quickly or peacefully in my sleep, preferably after I have lived another 40 to 50 years. Story 47. Drowning. All these thoughts run through your head, like, is this it? No one will ever find my body, probably. Story 48. Slowly forgetting yourself like dementia. If I ever get it, I just hope I am well enough to get to a place that allows doctor-assisted suicide. Story 49. I found out from a news article that someone I knew committed suicide by setting himself on fire. He was found in the parish where he lived. I have always wondered how tortured a person has to be to willingly set themselves alight. But he was a man of faith. That is my feared method of dying. Something about burning alive is just brutal. Story 50. Dementia is not just the gradual loss of everything that makes me human. I am scared of the idea that I will have moments of clarity while being trapped in the ruined body, unable to even scream. Story 51. Being tortured until you die is one of the worst ways to go. If the torturer is creative enough, you can experience multiple unimaginable pains before you pass away. I heard of a death penalty in Asia where they tie you to stakes on the ground, spreading your limbs out, and then plant bamboo underneath you. Bamboo grows quickly, so in a matter of days you will be pierced by many sticks. Since it grows through you, it also closes the wounds. Eventually, you die because one or more of your organs is damaged enough to stop functioning completely, or from dehydration if you are unlucky enough to survive that long. Story 52. Drowning has scared me a lot lately, whether from a shark or crocodile attack. Being murdered, particularly by stabbing or being beaten with an object, is also frightening. Story 53. Alternatively, how terrible would it be to have immortality and end up stuck at the bottom of the ocean? Story 54. Burning or drowning. Saw a comment about dying in a nursing home or assisted living. No, let me die with bed sores in an air-conditioned room so I can be as obnoxious as possible to punish the poor caregivers. Burning or drowning. Misery until the lights go out. Story 55. That person who got stuck upside down while cave diving in Nutty Putty. Starving to death, being eaten alive, or tortured to death. Anything slow would be unbearable. Story 56. I saw my older relatives die, some with the same diseases I have and some I am at risk of. Alzheimer's disease, suffocated through chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and diabetes complications. Story 57. Brain aneurysm. My great-aunt was cooking while my great-uncle was reading the newspaper. She suddenly gasped and said, "Oh no," before falling to the floor. The ambulance arrived within 5 minutes, as the hospital is nearby, but she passed away just 1 minute later despite my great-uncle performing CPR immediately. It is horrible. One moment you are living your normal life and the next you are gone. Story 58. Anything that blocks your breath, such as drowning or suffocation. Obviously, it all ends with no breath, but I mean things that specifically stop breathing and cause it not result from it. Story 59. Being slowly crushed. Something about being alive and not able to take a breath while in immense pain seems like the worst to me. I also think what happened to the man in Nutty Putty Cave is one of the worst ways to go. Story 60. Water is just terrifying, and we need it to live. Too much water can kill you, too little water can kill you. Too hot water can kill you, too cold water can kill you. Pressurized water can kill you, pure water can kill you. Water can harm you in many ways and each one will hurt. Yet you still need to drink 8 glasses a day, or you will become dehydrated and die. Story 61. Fatal insomnia is the inability to sleep despite all efforts. This condition leads to inevitable death. Story 62. I am afraid to die while I am in a coma. I learned this when I was in a coma for over 2.5 weeks, and I had horrible nightmares the entire time. Actions the nurses took, such as changing my bite block and turning me to clean me, were perceived as physical abuse and torture. It was the scariest experience I have lived through. I almost passed away in my coma, and if I had died while trapped in a nightmare, that would have been worse than hell. This completely changed my opinion on do not resuscitate orders. I no longer want to have a do not resuscitate order. I do not want to pass away in a nightmare I cannot wake up from. Please do not debate do not resuscitate orders. This is just what happened to me, and it is perfectly fine to choose do not resuscitate. I just cannot do it after what I went through. Story 63. Most to be fair, the only one I do not fear is in my sleep. Out of everything though, I would say it is slow, drawn out, and in pain. Story 64. Crushed, especially when stuck under debris, unable to move or be reached for help, slowly dying under rubble. Story 65. My father-in-law died of lung cancer last week. He was an athlete, always ate healthily, never smoked, and never consumed excessive amounts of alcohol. He suffocated miserably and was terrified at the end because he could not breathe. This is a way I would be very afraid of dying. Story 66. Not fear itself because these are not likely things to happen. But I feel that either drowning or being burnt alive must be among the worst. And by drowning, I do not mean a sudden mass flood. Just being in the middle of the ocean. Yes, you can swim, but for how long? Eventually getting tired and drowning sounds terrifying. Story 67. This was such a good read, weird to say, but it is something I don't even like to think about and all of it sounds terrible. I just like the movie where I die as an old lady peacefully in my bed. I don't think that's likely, and being a victim of a nursing home is terrifying. Story 68. Suffocation, especially any form that involves neck compression. I do not even like wearing turtlenecks. Story 69. Brazen bull, which was more of a scare tactic than an actual torture method. Burning and drowning while claustrophobic would also be terrible. Story 70. I have not seen it yet, but one method I imagine would be scaphism. Being waterlogged, stuck in your own filth, and unable to reach what is literally eating you alive is not appealing. Story 71. At the moment, burning to death. was draining the water from pasta and thought, damn, I would really hate for this to touch me. Imagine swimming in it. Story 72. Getting stuck in a hole headfirst like the person who was sealed in with cement some time ago. That is a nightmare scenario. A slow, horrific death. Story 73. Just one? Definitely can't narrow it down that far. Being stuck is easily in the top 3. So is something eating or dissolving my skin or body away, like flesh-eating bacteria. Yes, I know it's not necessarily deadly, but I'd likely just kill myself anyway. Then probably being eaten alive. Story 74. The kind where you cycle in and out of the hospital for years, spending gradually more time in with each cycle until you are more or less just in the hospital all the time. Everyone talks about the gruesome details of every last problem and its complications until you are just lying there listening to the machines that have taken over your bodily functions, waiting. Story 75. I think death by drowning. The feeling of not being able to breathe and water filling our lungs sounds awful. Either that or burning to death slowly. Story 76. There are many terrible ways to die that are painful, lonely, and frightening. But my biggest fear is to die in my sleep. If I am going to die, I would want to say goodbye to the people I love. Story 77. My great-aunt passed away from a neurodegenerative disorder, but they never determined exactly what it was. In the last few years of her life, she was non-communicative and frozen, but you could tell she was still there cognitively. I was her caretaker for a short while, and she would regularly experience panic because she could not communicate exactly what she needed. One day, while I was helping her get dressed, she was able to muster the words. She grabbed me and clearly said, "Please, I just want to die." Since then, that has been my biggest fear. Being trapped in your own body and unable to communicate. When she passed, it was a relief to many of us, and I miss her every day. Story 78. Drowning. As someone who grew up on boats and near water, it has always terrified me. The thought of my lungs filling with water instead of air seems so painful. Story 79. Being imprisoned in a concentration camp like Alcatraz is a possibility for many, as there is no legal basis to prevent it. Story 80. I do not want to stop breathing if I die of old age or in my sleep. I recently stopped breathing in my sleep almost to the point of blacking out, and I am still traumatized from it. Story 81. Anywhere it would inconvenience others and cause them trauma is not fair. In my head, I do not know, but I would hate to be a kid and see somebody fall off a building. It is just my thinking. Why would I fall? I do not know. Story 82. I do not care what truly takes me out. I just do not want to be violated by another person while I am fading away. Story 83. I am struggling with thoughts of ending my life. I do not want to go through the process of reaching that mental state and then recovering from it. Story 84. Not even dying from it, but honestly just having dementia. Nothing is more terrifying than the concept of losing who I am, of forgetting everyone I care about, and the idea of looking at my wife and not recognizing her at all. Story 85. I have always had a massive fear of being stabbed to death, especially with the zombie knives you see throughout the United Kingdom now. Story 86. Definitely being buried alive. It's pretty generic, but oh my God. The worst thing. The slowest death while people above are already heartbroken, thinking you are dead when miraculously you are alive and never died, but not for long. Story 87. I had pneumonia 2 months ago, and it was so bad that I could not stand up without getting dizzy or feeling like I was going to fall over. If I walked more than 5 steps, I would have to sit down and catch my breath. When I went upstairs, I had to sit on the top step for 5 to 10 minutes to try to catch my breath. It was so bad that my dad would walk by me and tell me to stop hyperventilating or I might do something to my heart. I am a young adult in my early 20s. Story 88. Burning, falling into a meat grinder, helicopter or airplane malfunction causing you to see the ground rushing toward you, tetanus, rabies, anal leakage, semi-truck crashing into a preschool, pit bull mauling me to death. Story 89. I used to say something like fire or being stuck in a place I couldn't escape, like the putty man. My mother passed away this month from cancer, and that is what I now fear the most. The others are quick and painless in comparison. Story 90. Top fears of dying. 1. Being eaten alive by zombies. The thought of a group of people swarming me, tearing me apart, biting and disemboweling me bit by bit is terrifying. It is not just gruesome, it is also incredibly claustrophobic, and it keeps me up at night. Burning to death. If the pain does not kill you, the injuries will. Drowning, being dragged down to the bottom by something, completely helpless. Story 91. Alzheimer's disease. The thought of not remembering anything and being unable to do anything until I die terrifies me. What is worse is that I will probably die of that or cancer, since conditions like those run through my family. Story 92. Abducted, tortured, and murdered. Maybe held captive over several days or weeks, trying to convince them to release me or escape, knowing my family is looking for me and will probably never see me again. Having to deal with a clearly abusive and mentally ill person who holds my liberty for the sake of cruelty, and appeasing them just to buy time. Literally my worst nightmare. Story 93. Drowning has been a fear since I was old enough to form memories. I must have drowned in a past life or something. Story 94. Being in the middle of the ocean at night and drowning. Being burned alive might also be very bad. Story 95. Terminal cancer diagnoses. I watched my father slowly die from it, and it destroyed me. The second would be a collision of some kind. Story 96. My biggest fear of dying would be falling through the ice on a lake and drowning while trying to find the hole I fell through. The thought of the panic running through your brain while trying to hold your breath and find the hole to escape terrifies me. Just typing this gives me chills. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.